All right, it says that I am live. Hi. First off, I want to make sure that you guys can hear me. So if you can hear me, I guess is what I should say. Let me know. I would like to see I'm if you guys can hear me. If not, and I'm just asking a question to the masses, all five of you or six of you, and you can't hear me, am I really asking a question? It's like if you aren't around to hear a tree fall type of thing. All right, awesome. So I get a an unexpected amount of people asking me about this rotary phone. And first off, they ask, is it real? Yes, it is real. Second, they asked, does it work? So my dad gave me this um, years ago, and I don't remember exactly when, but it was years ago. It was in his house, and when it was there, it did work. I don't know if it works now, um, but it did work before. It is very heavy. I, from what I know, it is from about the 1950s, early 1950s. It is from Bell Systems, which I don't think exists any longer. And this one is from area code 313, which is Detroit. So that's that. And it does work, yes. One of the things that really annoys me, and I don't know if you guys get annoyed by this too, is say, for instance, a politician goes on, those Sunday programs or Saturday morning programs that are very, very highly political, and they, introduce a policy or something like that. But then you can hear people, and I do hear often people say, oh, they shouldn't politicize X. They shouldn't politicize Y. And okay, what are you saying by this? When you say such a thing, it just is nonsensical because one, they're politicians and they're there to tell you something political, right? It is by nature politicized. Everything is politicized. Everything involves politics. It's just the name of the game. So saying that it shouldn't be politicized is very strange to me. And I don't think, as at least it's very strange where in the vast majority of cases, it really doesn't apply. Where it may apply, where you might want to say, don't politicize this or that, is in public health. Um, Although, again, public health is in and of itself subject to politics. I mean, who makes those public health policies? Supposedly politicians, right? I think the response to the public health crisis we face today isn't really something that is quote unquote politicized. I think it's more, and this is not a term, so you can't look it up. It doesn't exist. I just made it up. I think it's bipartisanized, where one side says um, something like wearing masks is beneficial. It will help reduce spreading this virus to people, especially particularly vulnerable people, those that are more likely to get really sick from it and even die. And then you've got the other side of the aisle that just thinks everything's a hoax. Or, they hang on maybe the president's every word, who demonstrates a lack of knowledge about the issue, but also a lack of really care about it. He doesn't seem to care. Um, and so this kind of feeds to the general populace where, if he's acting lax about it, oh, the people around him are very lax about it. They're not wearing masks. I don't know if you've seen any of his conferences or not, like his press conferences, press briefings, whatever they are, where he just goes on a tangent. He is not really protecting himself, and everybody in the room or the area is not really protecting themselves. And so, how does this look to the general populace? Well, it looks like everything's safe, it's okay. He's not sick. The people around him aren't sick, even though we know that there are carriers that that will never show signs of having this illness, right? So you've got one side that wants to be very careful, maybe, and you've got another that doesn't care at all. But I think that we do find some general agreement on issues where the public health basically impacts the economy. So a good example of this is when the governors of Texas and Florida basically contended that U.S. citizens should be willing to sacrifice their lives for the American way of life. And they did so when questioned about how the economy will fare under the outbreak. And so basically, what they've done here is kind of integrated. The American way of life is the economy. It's kind of like a substitute word for them. They don't see it as anything but economics. Even though they know nothing about economics, by the way, they just don't see that the American way of life should be about health and prosperity and freedom and all of those things that you think of or you envision, or at least you're told to envision when you consider the American way of life. And so there's agreement here with like somebody like the Democratic minority leader, again, of the American Senate. If you aren't familiar, his name is Chuck Schumer, and I'm going to read a quote here. He said in a public briefing, he stated basically, if you don't open up the schools, you're going to hurt the economy significantly. And while he's not necessarily wrong, and this comment was made in relation to an economic stimulus bill, so he was very much focused on the economy, it does seem to be off, right? That there is so much focus on the economy during a pandemic that actually has been shown to kill people. It may not kill at the high percentages that maybe it did initially, just because other countries have gotten have used different tactics or medical care procedures, to deal with it. And also, might I add, a country like the United States, who is consistently shown to underreport the number of deaths from this outbreak. And so we don't really have a reliable estimate here, especially when you have an entire nation of over 300 million people, about over 350 million, underreporting the number of deaths. And we don't even know how many people have died as a response to COVID being in the air, the outbreak. So how many people have died from, say, a heart attack because they didn't go to the hospital where a lot of COVID patients are? And it actually has been overwhelming some rural hospitals as to why it is not being reported is beyond me. But I know very well that it is actually affecting rural hospitals significantly. And so why do I bring this up? Why am I talking about, outbreaks and there's actually bipartisanship here about, the importance of the economy seeming to take precedence over what I would consider to be a public health issue. Again, people have died from this. We do know that. And we know it's about, right? And so I want to begin with a quote, the whole discussion that I'm talking about here. Where the political elite can command all, where they can act arbitrarily, where they can kill as they so whim, they are most likely to commit democide. So, what is democide? So, democide is designed to kill or cause the death of people, right? Demo is people, side is kill. And it does so because of their religion, race, language, ethnicity, national origin, class, political affiliation, anything that can be construed as opposition to the current governmental system or current social system. And it may be in order to fulfill some quota of some sort. Maybe the public official, whomever they are, is told, well, you have to get rid of X number of people. I don't care who they are, but that is the quota. And it may be democide is also where someone dies due to forced labor or enslavement. Slavery, like the institution America had for hundreds of years, right? It could be done by a massacre, through basically the imposition of lethal living conditions. So say that the government basically absolutely knows that someone lives, that a community next to a power plant or some sort of factory is polluting the water, but they just don't care, right? The citizens are getting poisoned, they're dying, maybe they're getting lead poisoning from their water systems that were switched out because crony capitalism or just capitalism, and people are suffering some severe health consequences from it and dying, basically. Another thing about this, so this is all kind of like a very intentional process, the quota filling, the massacring, and things like that. It's obviously very focused. But a democide can also include something that causes death by virtue of an intentionally or knowingly reckless and depraved disregard for life, which some of these researchers that do research this say that is a practical intentionality. It shows that there is an intention that's practical. I know that kind of doesn't make sense, but it's more about the basically knowing that something is occurring and not caring, about the loss of life there. It can be in the form of deadly prisons, concentration camps, forced labor, prisoners of war. It can also be killings from medical or scientific experiments on humans. Think back Nazi Germany when they, did that to basically Jewish prisoners. It can be implemented through tortures or beatings. That knowingly cause death. It can be encouraged or condoned murder, such as looting and pillaging. So say, the government says, yeah, invade, let's say the federal government says, invade Oklahoma, invade the Native American territories there. And we're going to take their land, but we're going to also take whatever else from them in the process of just killing them too. A democide can also be a result of a famine or epidemic during which government authorities withhold aid or knowingly act in a way to make it more deadly. Another thing that seems very on the nose to me is forced deportations and expulsions causing deaths. I don't know if you are aware of this, but some of the migrants that have attempted to come to the United States, even through legal means, to seek asylum, um, they were escaping basically being murdered from whatever was happening in their country. And we send them back because that's what the administration's policy is. And they've died. A lot of them have died just because we didn't allow them to seek asylum, even though seeking asylum is a perfectly legal process. Um, yeah. Where democide traditionally occurs is under authoritarian regimes. It's usually, in this case, it's usually enacted against the population as a form of terror. So it's successfully employed to enforce an ideology and to maintain power. So or democide and the threat of democide, if you will. But there are some researchers that have tried to kind of come up with this balance here, which is how, under what circumstances will a democide occur in relation to the economy. And from what I've read about this, and the literature is much more extensive than what I've gone through and what I'm presenting today, the results seem a bit mixed. So you have democide as a response to the economy. So basically, it's becoming, there's too many people in the system. And the system, from a governmental point of view, needs to basically get rid of some workers because their labor doesn't matter. It's too cheap. And this, again, will actively get rid of people. And by get rid of, I mean kill. Or it could be that, oh, an epidemic's occurring. How convenient. You know what? We have too many workers. Let's just kill them or allow them to die. And that's an interesting take on this. They've done some fancy regressions. There's even some factor in it. You know what? It doesn't matter how they came about this conclusion, if you will, on this type of relationship. But it seems like under this circumstance, again, there are just too many people. They should die. We should therefore, kill them in order to boost wages and to basically boost the income of our fellow countrymen. Unfortunately, in every single case here where democide may occur in relation to some economics thing happening, it's actually kind of made the economic system even worse, or the economic situation even worse. At least in every case that has been actively measured. They didn't really include the democracies or democratized states. It's always been, they kind of focused on dictatorships that are obvious dictatorships. They didn't focus on, oligarchies. They didn't focus on pseudo democracies or anything like that. So, and then in another situation that other researchers have looked at is that democide may be the result to the economy. So in this case, it may be they want to basically, save it. Maybe the economy is going sour and they think that it will save it, and which again, it's been shown to not save it, but there were some relationships here as well, and they've done more sophisticated analyses to come up with this. It could be maybe a mix, right, of economic and social issues. So in this case, it could be a democide occurring in order to save the economy. It may also be a form of terror to maintain power. And from all of the messaging that our political figures in the United States have indicated, from their total utter lack of um, essentially caring about their population, it seems like it's kind of more the latter case here, where um, it's they're trying to think that maybe killing off people will actually salvage the economy, like the person governor said from Texas. You know, they should be willing to workers should be willing to sacrifice their lives for the American way, the economy. Go out there, be out on the front lines. This is a war. You should be a soldier in the fight against economic crashing, right? Like, this is nonsensical to me. I cannot believe we live in a world where this is happening, where you have a government that their best response to this crisis, if you will, has been maybe wear masks. I mean, that's it. I think we spent a total of 30 days in quasi locked down conditions, where people still kind of went out and went to work, where you had people basically saying that it was a conspiracy, coming from very high up in the political food chain, all the way down to quote unquote subjects, like a kingdom. Um, so you still saw some spreading of this virus, even though it was less. It was not to the capacity of overwhelming these rural hospitals, right? Um, they opened up too quickly in order to salvage the economy, and people have died as a response to this. And now we're looking at, sending kids back to school, or maybe kids are already back to school. Where again, you have to send the kids back to school, otherwise the economy will suffer because people won't be able to go to work, um, because they have to monitor children and watch their kids. I don't We live in a society where if you happen to leave a child home alone, in some cases, um, and the government basically finds out about this, that you can go to jail for that. You can be in prison for that, which is kind of the opposite of what that behavior of leaving your child alone, what you're trying to discourage there, that behavior, because you're basically leaving the child without a parent. Either way, this is the situation that we're in. Um, and so I'm curious, is it is it more what was I thinking here? I had a question to myself and to you guys, and now I've forgotten it because I got distracted. Um, what was I saying? Basically, da 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 da. Okay, yeah, I remember now. So I'm curious, is that reasoning that they are saying, this kind of salvaging of the economy, do you think that that is why they're saying this, or why, basically, the federal administration has first started saying that it was just a conspiracy, and et cetera, et cetera? Do you think that that's why, or do you think that it's actually could be utilized as a form of terror? I think someone uh, I can't say for sure, just because this is hearsay. I didn't hear him directly say this, but I know that Donald Trump basically said, or at least I was told this, basically in some roundabout way, he was saying, vote for me because I can make sure that you aren't evicted. People who are evicted are homeless and are, more vulnerable to the elements. more vulnerable to pandemics, and could die. And so is that a threat there? I'm curious what you guys think about that. Do you think that there's a big gap here in the literature? I think, or at least in the research about this. Do you think they should be focusing on democracies or supposed democracies, like the United States, for instance? I mean, the United States had a whole system of slavery that is a democide, right? Because those working conditions were horrid and people would die. What do you guys think? So Aaron A says schools are a babysitting service, and if they're closed, people can't risk their lives for banks. Christopher Freeman adds that this, oh gosh, it started scrolling real fast. Sorry, guys. This is a great reset the world's elites have planned. They'll replace our jobs with automation and we won't be needed. Don't they need, we live in an economy where consumption is how it rolls. So if they kill off people, wouldn't that hurt? And it was intentional in this regard to basically replace the workers with automation in an economy that's really consumption based. Who is going to consume if not the people that they killed, right? To replace with automation. Oh, did they? Okay, Brad Bloom says that Georgia's school shut. So for those who do not know, there were a couple of teenagers or kids that go to school in Georgia, and they opened the classroom, had in-person schooling, and I think two kids documented this. They took pictures of people, of the number of people that weren't wearing masks and things like that. It looked like, and not practicing social distancing. These students basically published those to the public on Twitter and probably TikTok and all these other social media sites. This made news and headlines and things like that, to the point where the kids were suspended from school. They weren't basically, the school system had no plans of actually addressing the issues that these kids were raising up, which is, A, we're not social distancing, we're getting put at risk here. We could spread this illness, and B, we can further spread it because we're not even protecting ourselves. Anyways, so, and this was in Georgia. And by the way, the suspension seemed to have been overturned. So they kind of like, oh, you're not suspended anymore once people found out about it. And it became national news. Anyways, Brad Bloom says Georgia schools shut down after the first day when virus spread, I guess. My order of priorities is keeping people safe, and I say that as a teacher, so I highly value education. I don't. So for those who are teachers in the, I guess, public schooling system, are you not able to get your union involved and say that, guys, I don't want to risk our kids' lives, I don't want to risk my life, you're putting us in dangerous working conditions, which was not the description of our job. We weren't supposed to be in this job. And can the unions do something at that point? Is there some sort of like strike that teachers can employ so that the in-person schooling thing goes away? I don't know. Okay, so I think this is a question from the question before the last one. Gary Priestley Gary Priestley says, I think it is possible to separate intent from outcome. For example, the GOP may not intend for people to die, but also may not be too concerned if people do, as long as it's not them. Well, that is an interesting perspective too, but to that I have to say, why is it then that the GOP was okay and still seems to be perfectly fine with affecting the lives of the people that would vote for them, because it's been made it's bipartisan. It's been made a partisan issue, right? Where the left does this and the right does this, and it produces different behaviors. The left may not be spreading the virus as easily or as widespread, but the right may be. And so you've got politicians basically okay with their own voters dying. It just, like, to me, I'll tell you where I stand on this. I do believe that in some way it's intentional, to the point where they do think that just getting people out there, ignoring this pandemic, it will salvage the economy. They're really, and they don't care if it's their supporters. Why they don't care is their supporters is a bigger issue here. Is it? And I believe, one, it's because we do live under an authoritarian government, right? I mean, this seems very obvious to me. And two, um, they may not care about the votes. Um, we don't have the most transparent voting system in the world at all. We have one of the least transparent voting systems in for the countries that call themselves democracies. So what's to say they couldn't, quote unquote, influence the election by changing the results? Who's to say that they couldn't do that? Because we can't even verify it. And when we do verify some of it, it's completely ignored. Um, I see some people agreeing to each other, so I want to see what they're agreeing to. Okay, formerly Rod Line, and this is an interesting thing to add here that I was asking on Twitter actually kind of earlier today. But formerly Rod Line says, if I may interject this, my 8-year-old is starting to get depressed. While neither my wife or I want to send him back to school, it is getting worrying, his sadness from social interaction. Yeah, and that is I think another risk factor here that I don't think people immediately consider, is kind of like how the mental health of people who are isolating, how they're handling the isolation process. I think there's, more literature on it since the pandemic and the outbreak and the social isolation has been occurring, but it's still pretty sparse. So I think that there is a real risk here uh, for mental health, and or at least like kind of a problem in mental health, if you will. I think there is the risk. I think interacting with people tends to be basically a good thing regarding it, mental health. It's one of the signs that you are not doing so well when you stop doing those things. So if you're forced to stop doing those things, I could envision it kind of being the other way around, where this is producing the effects of depression, if you will, where the social isolation does this as opposed to the depression causing the social isolation. I don't know what the solution is here. I don't know if uh, basically getting on social media more is the solution. I was asking earlier today, how do parents who can't watch their children, what do they do? When school opens back up, they really have no choice but to send their child back to school because they can't be home and watch them because they have to go to work. So, what is it that the parent is supposed to do in this situation? Someone I was legitimately curious and looking for some answers. There some kind of thought out answers. One of the things that I was thinking of is that, group homeschooling, basically. But that still doesn't address the monitor situation, especially if you're my idea of group home sitting in this situation is, parents rotate, they take turns teaching a subject. And they take turns maybe for the week or the day or something like that with a specific subject that they are particularly good at or well versed in. And so maybe they do that and then, they trade, and they do it remotely. So they teach the children, from the computer, like a live stream or hold a live lesson, if you will. But that doesn't really address the home alone issue and how that addresses the educational part, right? And I don't know how the home alone thing would be addressed. I think that it's a problem too to send your kid back to school, though, and that could result in death, right? For some people. Uh, let's see. Yeah, Brad Bloom says that this is a no-win scenario here. If we keep people as safe as possible, there will be mental or emotional hardship, missing out on things, etc. But we have to do the best we can to deal with the dumpster fire reality we're in. Yeah. hmm Yeah. Um, Brad Bloom goes on to say that you have a lot of good things to say. The system is choosing to put millions of people in impossible choice positions. And I think that this is an opportunity for us to really look at the system in which we live and decide as a collective if it's the appropriate system for us, if it's going to assure our survival, like a society was initially intended to do, or if it's more harmful, if the risks outweigh the benefits here. In this situation, it sure as hell does seem to be the case. I think it's time to assess this. I think it's time to make changes. Um, Unfortunately, the people that are already, in that boat where, they've already inspected the system in which they live, they already believe that changes should and need to be made. They are right now the hardest hit by this. And so I don't think that the right people or the people that have a say in this are doing that because it's not really affecting them as much. They're not the people that have lost jobs and are being evicted. They're not the ones who, are quote unquote essential and need to be out there in public. They're not working service positions or fast food positions like people of lower means or of lesser means have to in order to survive. Uh, Aaron A says, yeah, so that's where I was going with that. Sorry. Aaron A says, question about the Democide thing. Is the idea you're saying that Democide isn't the fact, isn't, is in fact, is in the fact Okay, so I don't really understand the question because I don't think it was written the way you had anticipated, Aaron. Is the idea that you're saying that democide is in fact forcing people to go back to work and stuff hurts old people and minorities more? Question mark. Can you retry that question? But I think it's not the democide that's doing it, that's forcing these people to go back to work. I think it's the economic system in which we live that's forcing people. The economic system, in addition to the policymakers who control the economic system, right? And who benefit largely from the economic system in which they themselves control. I think it's that is forcing people to, uh, make that decision to send their child to um, back to school, or forcing them to go in public to work, to not socially distance, not take every precaution necessary. I think it's more of the system. Um, it is certainly hurting people. Like older people more. It is hurting people who are have a lower socioeconomic, um, who are, I guess, poorer, if you will, of again of lesser means. It's hurting them. So encapsulated in this are, racial minorities because they are discriminated against more so than people realize, and unable to get really good positions despite their educational background, often despite it. And so they are of lesser means. And this is by design that it would hit them the hardest and first because basically the nation is a fucking racist country. Newsflash. Um, Okay, so here's the actual question. So is the by Aaron A. So is the government committing democide on purpose? Whether it is or not, is the assumption that minorities and old people are expendable either way. Okay, so to the first question, so democide, as I understand it, and as I kind of just read, or stated from what I had read, um, is either purposeful. In the beginning, it's an active process. It's an order. Kill this many people, commit a democide, a genocide here, things like that. Or it could be where a uncontrollable thing happens, like a pandemic, uh, spreads, right? But the government knowingly uh, withholds aid to help people, to fight the pandemic. They have it basically an utter disregard of the lives in which they govern. That is also under the classification of democide as it is understood within the literature. And so it's kind of I think that the United States and how they've handled the pandemic would fall under that second category of the of the withhold of aid, and the and the lack of care, the utter disregard for the lives of the people in which they govern. To the second question, which was whether it is or not, is the assumption that minorities and old people are expendable either way. Yes, I think that that is the obvious assumption that minorities, older people, people of the quote unquote lower classes, if you will, are more expendable. And that they are the ones who should sacrifice their lives to assure comfort is maintained by those in higher, uh, in the within the higher class, or the ruling class, if you will. I think most workers in that regard are expendable from that perspective, from kind of that, you know, political hierarchical system in which we have, those at the top of that political hierarchical system. Um, okay. So formerly Rod Line says, the very scary thing is while this is very bad, could you imagine if this was killing 10%, 30%? Talk about being unprepared. Yes. It would be worse if it was there. We don't really have a grasp of the percentages yet in the United States because of the fact that it is underreported and because of the fact that we have a delay in deaths, right? Because of the continual expansion of the opening of the government and the virus not being contained at all. Um, there was a lapse in deaths and people getting infected because they weren't out as much. Now, as more people get braver, believe in whatever conspiracy that it doesn't exist, as more people get exposed, maybe as more schools open up, we may see those percentages go up. They may also go down. Who knows? Providing that these states report them correctly. I think some states have just said we're no longer counting. I think I read an article. Well, I know I read an article today that state saying that Florida had stopped counting completely. I don't know if that's going to hold. Maybe the Floridians can, you know, do you know, do something about it? I'm not sure because I don't think we have a government that's particularly responsive to the voters. And that kind of leads me again to that question of what is the purpose of allowing people to die in this fashion or to get very sick. People have already lost their jobs. We're already in what would be considered a Great Depression, but you still have politicians saying that these X, Y, and Z need to happen in order to salvage the economy that has already tanked. And it doesn't make sense to me because a lot of people have already lost their jobs and no longer have health insurance. So these aren't people that need to be particularly out all the time or in crowded situations. They don't need to be sending their kids back to school in crowded situations. The economy is already suffering, period. And so, why continue to push for openings of things when the economy is already in the toilet? Right? Does anybody know why I'm saying that, or does anybody agree with me there at all? Okay, so Gary Priestley adds that there are no consequences for current conservatives destroying our progressive future. That's true. I think that there's a reason why we have lifetime politicians. I think that politically speaking, it's relatively closed off to people, regular everyday people like you and me. So why is that? Because we probably live under an authoritarian government that now is going fascist, more fascist, if you will. All right, catch you later, Gary. Thank you for adding to the discussion. Yeah, I think I don't know what's going to happen here because Brad Bloom adds, speaking to someone else in the chat, but I think that it is kind of um, that thing that I'm getting at is, well, if they truly allow tens of millions to become homeless, then they will have consequences, and it won't be as kind as simply losing re-election. I don't know if there will be. I mean, will there be consequences? Here, let's look back at history in the United States. So we had in the 1930s a Great Depression, economic collapse. So many people were homeless or on the brink of homelessness. We had no political rising. We did see kind of a more push towards socialism, though. We saw the first and only socialist uh, person run for president during that time. Um, but the reason why kind of this push towards what I would consider to be more progressive society is because of FDR, and a lot of people look at the things that he enacted and as vital, right, and as a good thing, Social Security, Medicare, all of those kind of public assistance programs. And that in and of itself saved the economic system that resulted in the crash because it wasn't full, um, you know, it wasn't full like socialist policies at all. It was a compromise between socialism and capitalism. And it was basically neoliberalism is what he implemented. And so, will we have a politician that comes in and does that again, or will we have a different reaction? Because right now, there's no way Donald Trump could ever mimic anything that FDR did, and could even mimic his popularity, his approval. This is the man that won 3 presidential elections in a row. And the term limits were only applied because he kept winning. So I don't know. I think that possibly you might see a different response because we have a different person in charge of of the governmental response, who is incompetent where these things are concerned. We may have a different response, or we may have the continual state of apathy and self feeling. What's the word where you I don't know. I get nervous on these things, guys. I'm human. But okay, so what's the word where you don't get yourself out of a harmful position because you're continually in that harmful position? It's kind of all you know. Learned helplessness. There we go. Or you, I'm kind of thinking that people are more likely to not react or try to react in a political, like electoral politics situation. I think that some people will definitely try to do something like the people. I think it was Louisiana who blocked the courthouse, blocked people from coming into the courthouse in order to prevent evictions, right? You may see some more of that, but in a nationwide response, I'm kind of thinking we're going to either have apathy or the continual state of learned helplessness, as was the case during the 1930s. Yeah, Brad Bloom adds that many people will take a bad routine over the uncertainty of no routine. It's an odd human phenomenon. That there's weird comfort in what you know, right? I had an argument not too long ago about Joe Biden. Well, it seems like a while ago, but it really wasn't. This was before Bernie Sanders dropped from the primaries, dropped from the race. And it was Joe Biden versus Bernie Sanders. And somebody um, said, the person that I was arguing with, that, you know, that we need to probably choose Joe Biden, uh, which kind of threw me back because he had been advocating for Sanders for a bit. And so I was confused by that. And I, responded to this person asking first why, mentioning all of the shit and baggage Joe Biden has. And his response was exactly to that point. He said, well, it's the devil we know, and there's an odd comfort in that. And even regardless of how bad it is, um, it's more, you can predict that badness. Like we can and have been for a very long time predicting Donald Trump's behavior and what we can expect. And I think that, well, again, I think the comfort in knowing what you know, or, the old things going, there's comfort in going back to the Obama era, even though Donald Trump was a response to the Obama era. I don't think it was a response like many people think. I think it's more of because of fascism and the purity of the office. In fact, there was somebody had a comment. If you will let me get up from my chair and go get my book, I will be right back. All right, so if you remember, last week we discussed fascism and kind of a little bit totalitarianism. And this is an interesting thing because I briefly mentioned something about that purity politics and purity. People will overlook corruption because they believe that whatever's taken through that corruption but belongs to the chosen people. And so somebody in the comments was, I don't know if I explained it well enough for you to convey this meaning. So I wanted to read directly what the author said. And this is, is this backwards for you guys? Or can you read it? It's How Fascism Works, The Politics of Us and Them by Jason Stanley, who is a professor of philosophy at Yale University. Anyways, so it was from this literature here that I got this kind of thing. And so I don't know if I conveyed what I had intended well enough. So I'm going to tell you what he said. So in this regard, corruption to the fascist politician is really about the corruption of purity rather than of law. Officially, the fascist politicians' denunciations of corruptions sound like a denunciation of political corruption, But such talk is intended to evoke corruption in the sense of the usurpation. Good God, like a usurper, that word, of traditional order. So he goes on to say in a different paragraph on a different page, to many white Americans, I don't know if many is realistic, to some white Americans, to many in his perspective, President Obama must have been corrupt because his very occupation of the White House was a kind of corruption of the traditional order. Fascist politicians know that their supporters will turn a blind eye to their own true corruption, since in their own case, it is just a matter of members of the chosen nation taking what is rightfully theirs. I hope that conveys it a bit more clearly than I apparently conveyed it last week. And I meant to kind of start with this and start with the person's comment. They either didn't understand or they didn't believe that this was a thing that happened. And if you paid attention to politics during the Obama era, you did see what he's talking about. This kind of idea of Obama basically corrupting the office of the presidency in some way, shape, or form. You saw a Congress that was completely unwilling to work with the president because they are racist as fuck. And there is no denying this. I mean, you could see it. It was plain, it was so visible, And so I hated that Donald Trump, who was racist against Barack Obama, Donald Trump was the person who started and propagated the whole birtherism shit, saying that Obama can't be American because why can't he? Because of the color of his skin? Because that was literally the only reasoning that he could fall on. It's not because he wasn't born in the United States, because he was. Or any of them. He lived in the U.S. for his entire life. So it couldn't have been that. It had to be something else. And it was probably a physical characteristic that Obama had, which was his skin color. And so you have somebody that is a response to Obama in that he corrupted the White House because he corrupted the traditional order of things, basically. The traditional power structure, he defied that. So it's unfortunate that that's the case. And so I can't even say that Donald Trump, I cannot say this with any sort of conviction in my heart, because I don't believe it to be true. But what some people argue that Donald Trump is a response to Obama era policies. I don't think a lot of people were paying attention to those policies. So how could it have been a response to that? It had to have been a response to something else. There was very few people paying attention. I know that because I was paying attention and would have conversations with people, and people would not know what the fuck I was talking about. So I don't think it was because of Obama era policies. And there's plenty of problems with those. Don't get me wrong. But I do not believe Donald Trump was a response to that. I believe it was to the more prone to fascism part and the defying of the natural order of things. Jake Smith mentions that Amanda true, but at the same time, they felt the policies. No, they didn't. Largely, by far, white Americans voted for Donald Trump. than did minorities who were most affected by the policies. On average, a Trump supporter and voter made $75,000 a year, and that is not someone hurting financially on the economic grounds. So there is no argument in my that I could even remotely envision or envision as being true that it was Obama era policy that resulted in Trump when the people that voted for him weren't hurt by them directly. And you just cannot convince me of this. Now, if there is more sufficient evidence saying that maybe these supporters and voters were, quite economically hurt, okay, then we have a argument that we can make on this. But they weren't. They were doing fine economically speaking and financially speaking. They were fine. And so how could they possibly feel the policies, especially on economic grounds, when they weren't hurting? I wish that there was something better to say, Amanda, the poor got poorer. Yeah, but no. So white Americans largely prospered under the Obama administration. It was Black Americans who were actually saw their wealth depleted under the Obama administration. So white Americans got the benefits of the recovery, if you will. Not all white Americans. Don't get me wrong. There are definitely impoverished white Americans, but there are more impoverished Black Americans. And they lost so much wealth under the Obama administration that it will take something of like 135 years to catch up to where white Americans were during this time, during the Obama administration. That's how much wealth they lost. And yes, it was largely, honestly, due to policies that came before him that resulted in the economic crash. That is when Black Americans took the hit and their wealth was obliterated under that situation. And it was Obama who had just gotten or just came into power the year that old policies really kind of were felt by people, particularly Black Americans. It's unfortunate, but that's the case. And so I cannot, with all of the information I have, with all of the facts on the ground, I just do not see that Donald Trump is a response or was a response to Obama era policies. It was Obama himself that he was a response to. And Biden isn't that response. And so I can see the attraction for white Americans who prospered under Obama era policies, but didn't like Obama because, skin, really finding favor in Joe Biden. That's probably why we're seeing so many conservatives that or never Trumpers kind of convert and say that they will vote for Joe Biden. I don't think we would have gotten the same response from if Bernie Sanders had taken it was basically the Democratic candidate. I don't think we would have seen that, but I do believe we would have seen more disadvantaged people basically going to the polls or trying to support Bernie Sanders. I think we would have seen that. Well, Christopher Freeman, yes, you're right. Rich Republicans should be actually thanking Obama. He was great for them. And he was. He was very beneficial to that particular segment of society. Um, okay, so Jake Smith, I can't. So this is a response to Jake, and I guess um, Jay Smith, Obama deregulated pharmaceuticals and white lost their lives in the opioid crisis. Well, one, we still that opioid crisis hasn't gone away. It's still here. So we still see so many people supporting Donald Trump, though, right? Even though the opioid crisis is being maintained and nothing has happened regarding, cutting the costs of pharmaceuticals for people. Uh, Deregulation of pharmaceuticals is an interesting concept, but I feel like it would happen still under this administration. And as it has maintained itself, it's still happening under this administration. And honestly, nobody's saying shit about it. The life expectancy of white Americans is still better than those who are not white. But yeah, it has gone down, and largely because of the opioid crisis. Uh, but they aren't the only ones who are affected. And I think this kind of what I'm about to say is kind of like in line with what I think Brad Bloom responded with, but to Jake's comment on the Obama thing. But I do believe that white Americans, some, not all, some white Americans are experiencing what it's like to be a minority in the United States, a racial minority in the United States. I think that that's what so many white people's motivation is in order to basically get Trump out of the White House is because they are directly impacted in the way that minorities have been traditionally impacted. Unfortunately, minorities are now more impacted because, Trump. But yeah, I think that they had to directly experience that. I like to Jake's point from last week. He mentioned that nobody was in support of Black Lives Matters. Nobody was out there protesting. Well, one, Black people were. I went to protests for that, and Jake, you went to protests too, and so again, not nobody, but not a lot of white people were out there because they weren't experiencing firsthand what Black people were experiencing: the over policing, the authoritarian state over their head, the continual fight for equality, et cetera, until the Trump administration came into power, and it became more obvious that Black Americans were suffering under the police state, thanks to video evidence. And you see some white people starting to get involved, and they're getting attacked by the police, and that motivated more white people to come out against that type of brutality. And it was only because they saw other white people being attacked by the very people that they initially thought weren't the bad guys. And so it's kind of like you were right, Jake, on your comment last week. But again, I don't think you're nobody. So I don't think that that's entirely to say nobody isn't fair, right? But a large portion of the population was not in support of Black Lives Matter at all. And so, yes, you are right in that to some extent. Right. Brad Bloom said Trump makes non-poor white people have an inkling of the suffering uh, minority communities have long endured. Exactly. So yes, yeah, that's basically where I'm getting at here. And now I have to wonder, what is the motivation behind not the lack of care that is being provided to the American people by their government uh, in response to the pandemic? Why? Why is it that they're okay with both sides of the aisle perishing, perishing, dying under from the pandemic? At this point, it is intentional, guys. Don't get me wrong on that. It is intentional. They know what the virus can do. They know that it spreads. They are aware of this. They know that a uh, government response to it on a wide scale that was standardized across all states, so that in order to contain the spread and to prevent it from going to even more vulnerable populations, completely ignored. And it's still being ignored. The economic stimulus that package that's being debated right now. First of all, this is all showmanship. What they're doing, they're going to come up with a deal last day, last minute, before they go off to their summer houses. Right? This happens all the time. All the time, they do it last minute, and it's a show. It keeps us all on edge, right? Because we're worried about our own financial well-being. And then it makes them look really good because, oh, look, last minute they came up with a compromise. Amazing. My guess is that they've already compromised whatever, and they're already in agreement on this. But they're just waiting to say they are, because it's showmanship. I know this is my conspiracy theory, so that's what it is. But that's my guess. Okay, so Brad Bloom, I'm reading, says, I feel the exact same way. I can't say with any confidence the motivation behind it. None of my hypotheses are good, though. It defies reason. I just think that, one, they're under the false impression or idea that exposing more people to the virus, causing massive medical debt, causing death. Basically, they believe that will save the economy and work well for them, and it has been working well for them already. I mean, look, there have been boosts in the stock market and people's individual portfolios who invest, because I don't know. There was an article on it and I didn't read it because it made me mad. I got angry by that. But yeah, so I feel like I said this during the recession. I wasn't really on social media during that time, so you guys wouldn't have known. But the people around me know this. I said that the wealthy will not only will be fine, but will get wealthier because of the recession. I think that's the idea here. They believe that, okay, well, if they save the economy, good. Who cares about people's lives? But also, if they don't save the economy, okay, we're still going to get rich, if not richer, right? I mean, look at Jeff Bezos. I know that everybody picks on him. There are a lot more people we can pick on and choose, but he is kind of the easiest target, if you will. Look how much wealth he's accumulated under this pandemic, when everybody else is suffering is suffering financially. Just look, he's gotten so much more wealth. He's accumulated more wealth, and it's wow, it speaks a lot for the system, right? It says a lot about it. But yeah. So my hypothesis here is they benefit either way. Um, I My only idea, the only rationale as far as voting is concerned, like the people who would likely vote to maintain the status quo, are basically the ones that believe that it's a conspiracy theory. And so they're not taking any precautions. And so they're likely to be the people that get the sickest from this, or die even. I, my only, the only thing I can come up with as to why um, conservatives would be okay with this is, as far as like politics are concerned, is because they know they don't need their votes. That This is my conspiracy theory, guys. So don't, like, I don't know, don't, take it with a grain of salt. You can maybe find evidence yourself, and or even counter this and tell me this is what's happening, because I really don't know. I am just trying to fill in the gaps where we have a lot of missing information. So why do they not need their votes is the question we should ask, I think. Um, do they have, I mean, the Republican Party, let's be real, is a dying party, right? Every so often they continue to lose voters. The country already on pretty much every issue leans left, and so the Republican Party is representing a very, very minor segment of the population. So they're already in that tough position. If I think it's okay to be in that position because I don't really care for them. But they're okay with potentially making that position even worse. And that is something that I really can only explain by saying they obviously don't need the votes because they already know they're going to rig the election. And they do rig elections. You think the Democratic Party is the only party who rigs elections? Come on. No doubt do they do it too. They have thrown out bills basically, or won't even allow certain bills to come to the floor. Basically addressing campaign financing and addressing foreign financing, because political candidates aren't supposed to even take legal bribes from other countries. But any bill that has been proposed or came up by the Democratic Party has been thrown out by the Republican Party. And again, why? Why is that the case? If you're okay with assuring that legal briberies come from your countrymen only, and you're not okay with foreign interference, then why would you throw out a bill that could easily be voted on, that you could easily vote yay on? Nobody would argue with you about it. Even your voters, if they're paying attention, they would approve of it. So they've thrown that out. And my guess is that they know they're going to rig the election. I don't know. So this was my theory too, Brad. I think I agree with this. But Brad Bloom says, it seems to me that Dems rig primaries, GOP rig generals. Maybe that's not accurate, just seems that way to me. I think you're right. I think that there's a certain level of accuracy here. And I mean, just look at Gore v. Bush, right? It came down to a court decision that a court that had a conservative majority, and they're like, no, Bush won, when all evidence supports the fact that actually Gore won. And that was never rectified. So why? It just seems like, yeah, that they tend to rig generals, while Democrats rig primaries. It's just how they work. It's just to maintain a right, a to the right, if you political ideology in the country and political status quo. Right. Christopher Freeman says Bezos will eventually buy everything that has been shut down because of the lockdown on society. So, yes and no. He wouldn't need to buy it because he would already have a company that already, does what these little businesses were doing. So why he doesn't need to buy them off. They've already closed down. They're no longer his competitors. He moves in with whatever he's already established. Okay, so this is a common misconception that people have. So the news reported back in the day, seems so long now, that Hillary Clinton got debate questions, before the debate. She did, and that's been confirmed. But so did Donald Trump. They gave the debate questions to both of them ahead of the debate. And it was only reported that Hillary Clinton got the questions when, in fact, both of them did. I mean, it's alarming for all the assistance the media did for the Clinton campaign. It's wild to me that they kind of neglected to mention that Donald Trump also got the debate questions ahead of time. That was just how they ran that particular debate. They anticipated they always knew they were going to get the questions ahead of time. Okay, so, oh man, this is a hard question. Johnny Spinoza asks, this is very much off topic, but we're already here, so why not? I'm here late. Okay. Sorry, you don't need to apologize. Do y'all think voting Biden is the only choice? I'm DSA. For those who don't know, that's Democratic Socialists of America, and haven't made up my mind. I'm watching my party and other leftist friends. Okay, here's where I am on the voting issue. I'm still debating the efficacy of electoral politics. I mentioned this in a discussion a while ago. But to that point, I do believe that in degrees, not in binary terms, but in a spectrum term, Joe Biden is better than Trump. Will a Joe Biden victory, will a Joe Biden presidency, basically appease the masses so that they're no longer involved in kind of more hands-on street action, even social media interaction and advocacy? That's a question that will always be there, because I don't know the answer to that. I part of me thinks that it may. Another part of me thinks that it won't, because people will still be suffering, because his policies aren't really going to help all that much. It will help white Americans for sure, most likely, but minorities who were already hurting in the first place are going to still be hurting. But should they also be hurting and under the Trump administration, where they fear for their lives and livelihoods. I would, if I lived in a state that mattered, right, a swing state, I'd vote for Joe Biden. I would actually go physically to do that because I know he would be better than Trump, and too many people are suffering. I mean, the other misconception is about those concentration camps and the child separation policy. Child separation policy did not occur under the Obama administration. When and if immigrants were detained, they were detained for a finite, very finite period, and then released to sponsors, to family members who were already here. They were not deported back in those cases. Now, did Obama deport a lot of people? Absolutely. That was the thing he did. He detained people for a very finite period of time. They were not concentration camps. They got their needs met. If they had a medical issue, that got attended to. That is not happening under this administration. Those camps, they're concentration camps now. They are packed to the brim. Deaths are occurring. Immigrants are being allowed to die in that situation, which again, this an attack on a minority group, and allowing them knowingly to die due to their poor condition in which the government has control over, is a form of genocide. I don't think Joe Biden would continue that policy. The child separation policy, although not officially in effect, is still occurring. I just read an article today, for heaven's sakes, about how children are still being separated and sent to camps and then sent to foster parents in the United States. That is a form of genocide, period. That is cultural, that is like cultural background erasure and punitive measures towards the parent. That is a form of genocide. You can look it up. I don't think that would continue under a Biden administration. And I obsess over this, over the concentration camps. I obsess over it, and I try to mention it as much as possible so that people remember that we have concentration camps in the United States, and they're most likely going to be death camps, because that is the direction it's heading under Trump. I really sincerely don't believe that would occur under Biden. And if I had the power to do this, I would release every one of those immigrants and then burn those camps to the ground. But I don't have that power. And so it has to go through something like Biden, unfortunately, because I do believe he would make that situation way better. And that's my 10 cents on that. I think Joe Biden would also come up with some sort of compromise that didn't hurt the establishment regarding Black Lives Matters. I do believe he would come up with something, a way, like, and not what Trump did. While Joe Biden says he will also add more money to the police force, which is such a like out of touch fucking thing to say. It's alarming. I think if he had the amount of civil unrest that Donald Trump has had, he would actually compromise on that. I mean, we're in a rock and a hard place regarding Joe Biden versus Trump. So Jake Smith mentions Biden criminal justice record equals genocide. Biden war record equals genocide. To an extent, yes. Yes, absolutely. And he and others in Congress are responsible for this. Uh, but at the same time, I don't think we would have an outwardly white supremacist in the White House that his closest advisor, like somebody like Stephen Miller, who is a certified white supremacist. I don't think Joe Biden would have somebody like that around him to influence his political decisions if he were to make them himself. I don't think he would have that issue. So, as far as degree is concerned, yes, Joe Biden is better, and I would hope that you guys can recognize that and could, if you're in a swing state, unfortunately vote for him. Because I cannot stop thinking about those concentration camps, and neither should you. And he would not operate them like this. They may still be there as detention centers, but they will not, go through the same horrific neglect that has been allowed under this administration, as well as the child separation policies that are in effect, but not officially in effect, but yes, are still going, which nobody is really caring about. And I don't like Joe Biden. I hate that he is the primary, winner. I like every core of my being absolutely detests him. Um, but I hate Trump more, if that makes sense. And again, it's like I have nothing to motivate me to vote for Joe Biden other than the fact that concentration camps are happening, and I think he would not have concentration camps. Um, that's just my 10 cents on it. It's a hard question. It's a hard answer, and it's a hard decision to make because he definitely is not a motivator, Joe Biden. We know what we're going to get with him, and it will, when we also are aware that it will not be enough. Yeah. Okay. So Michael Contreras, I hope I pronounced that right, says, "Oh, don't get me wrong. I don't want Trump's second term. It just upsets me that Joe flat out said to the immigrant activists to go take a walk for asking him to end deportations." Yes, and that should absolutely bother you. If you are an empathetic human being, that should be something that you absolutely hate. I mean, Joe Biden is one of it's like, guys, I feel like it's a punishment. I feel like Joe Biden was pushed up as the runner on purpose to say, guys, look how bad Trump is. You will continue to suffer, progressives, specifically progressives. You will continue to suffer under the Trump administration. Do not forget that Donald Trump and Ted Cruz wrote an official kind of thing, right? It's not a bill, but it's kind of an operating as such. It's almost close to it. It is the executive. Is what I don't know if it was an executive order or not, but left-wing activist was used as it was interchangeable in either the executive order that was written or whatever it was. It was interchangeable with terrorist. And so you have the left that could potentially be classified as a terrorist under the Trump administration. And so I feel like the Democratic powers that the Democratic Party elites, the runners, whoever runs that operation, basically said, progressives, we're going to actually punish you for supporting Bernie Sanders and not supporting somebody like Pete Buttigieg. And we're going to give you the absolute worst candidate we have. as a warning to you guys to never ever vote against our candidate again, or to not support our candidate again. It feels like a punishment, right? I feel like, either it's a bullet to my head or a bullet to my, what did he say, leg or something like that. The bullet to my head is Donald Trump. The bullet to my leg is Joe Biden. Either way, it's a bullet. One outcome, I guess, is preferable over the other. And that's where we're at right here. I hate it. I absolutely, absolutely detest it. Right. And therein lies the problem with all of this. So Christopher Freeman kind of nails it here. The Dems are totally okay with another 4 years of Trump. They love him. Yeah, he is a fundraising method, right? They don't mind. They're not affected by his policies at all. In fact, some of them, probably absolutely most of them in federal Congress benefited under these policies. They're not the ones that are hurt. They're not the ones in detention centers and things like that. Nothing is affecting them. And so they don't have to worry about it. And in doing so, their donors are kept happy, regardless of who's in power. Because as you guys are probably aware, the United States, the political system here is an oligarchy. This has been borne out time and again as people continue to research this and find that that politicians are responsive to their donors more so than they are responsive to their voters, period. In fact, it is a lot more so, if you will, because they know there's no punishment. There's no like worry that they're really going to lose much political capital, which is all they care about. It's disgusting. Oh, which reminds me is something that I wanted to continue here regarding the Democide issue. Again, they're not the ones suffering from this. I guess Herman Cain suffered from it, but he was, oh my God, this is embarrassing for whomever wrote this. I screenshotted the tweet, but he was a dedicated brain surgeon. And Dr. Herman Cain. Okay, guys, Republicans, that's the other black guy. He's not a doctor. He never was a doctor. So that's embarrassing for them. But it's indicative of a larger problem, right? It doesn't matter the black guy that supports their party. They don't care what they do. They don't care even what they look like, right? They don't look to care enough. They just want that representative to represent all black people and basically chastise them for not supporting that party, like those smart few black people do, that they don't even bother to know what they look like and know what they do and have done, right? That's disgusting. But anyways, here's an important part on the Democide issue I wanted to share with you guys, and this will wrap up the entire discussion here, is that Democide has been, again, is more likely to occur under authoritarian regimes. The research indicates that it's less likely to occur under democratically run regimes. And so this is the reason. where the elites are checked by countervailing powers, where they are restrained and held to account for their actions, basically, where they must answer to the people they murder, they are least likely to commit democide. Is that not the most logical thing ever? If they are held accountable, they won't kill you. They won't kill your family because then they will no longer be in power. But that is not, they aren't even worried about it here. That should tell you what type of political system in which we live. If you don't even believe that we live under a fascist regime, you must see that we live under at least an authoritarian one, which isn't a really good thing. Again, an authoritarian regime that responds more to the corporate elites than they do their voters. That's not a democracy, guys. So we will see if anybody voting out there actually sways the election. Because I think that, as Brad Bloom mentioned, the Democratic Party rigs primaries, while the Republican Party rigs generals. Now, rigging is an entire process. It could be voter suppression. That's a form of rigging an election. It could be, caught inducing doubt in the process by saying people are going, people who have no right to vote will be voting to sway the election. That's a form of rigging the election because that is a falsehood. That is a lie, period. Certain people, like immigrants, maybe that's what somebody may be saying. That is a form of election rigging. Gerrymandering districts to suppress representation of the masses of your voters is a form of election rigging, of rigging an election. And so all of these are in play. All of these are in play under both Democrats and Republicans. The Republicans usually implement these things while the Democrats do nothing about it. That should tell you a lot about where we are. And guys, we're kind of on our own here as far as, assuring that, people we love and care about don't die. I think now is the time we should be actively community building, like hardcore community building, because we know the government won't respond. They're okay with us dying. Our communities shouldn't be okay with that. And so if we, bond together as a community to assure that we all are healthy, that we all have our needs met, that is what these times call for, because it is not going to get fixed at the federal level. It's not going to get fixed at the state level. I mean, look how inconsistent all these states have been. It just will not get fixed there. But it can be fixed in your neighborhood or in your apartment complex. Just check on each other. If you have means, if you have wealth, an entire community could, come together and put money into like a community fund, so that if anybody is at risk of eviction, maybe the community could help assure that doesn't happen. On a financial level, now they could do more by, like they did in Louisiana, by blocking that courthouse and things like that, but you can't be there every day. And people will not be there every day. So the I guess the more practical thing to do is to make sure that people have the money so that they don't have to worry about being homeless. And we can do that as a community. I really do believe that we can. we are absolutely on our own regarding this pandemic. So we have to, be smart about it. You know, as a community, make sure, just check on each other, make sure uh, members of the community aren't ill, and if they are ill and you can do so, try to convince them to get medical attention. And if they don't do that, which is likely to happen in the US, let's be real, um, see what you can do for them. Make a pot of soup, chicken soup, and bring it over to them. You can leave it at their door, and then they can pick it up, or slide it through a window or something, so that you aren't directly getting infected yourself, hopefully. um, just do these little small things for your community, because I really believe that's all we have left. It's sad. All right, so at that, I am done for now. I've been talking your ears off, probably. I usually only run for an hour, and it's about 2 hours, guys. So thank you guys for joining me on this discussion. I hope you at least learned what democide is, what it looks like, who may be implementing it, what type of regimes are likely to fall prey to it. And I guess at the end of the day, it's all about community building. All right, guys. Thanks for watching, and I will check. Oh, exciting thing. I'm going to have a guest on. I think next week. I think we've settled on next week, and I'm going to premiere a video and then come with a discussion after the official video finishes with my guest. So I hope you guys catch that, and I think you'll really enjoy it and learn a lot from our discussion that we will have. And I will give you more details as I have more details, but you are going to get an official video that is like the standard videos on this channel. So please look out for that. All right, and at that, I'm going to end the stream. So you guys have a really great weekend. Stay safe, try to stay healthy, check on each other, etc. Bye.